Copyright disclaimer. Under Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing, nonprofit, educational, or personal use, tips a balance in favor of fair use. Okay, you guys, this article is a little bit older, but I do want to cover it. This is regarding Christy King Colbran. She later married Mike Rinder. But I feel this is good information. And this is from the New York Times. Defectors say Church of Scientology hides abuse. By Lori Goodstein. Dated March 6, 2010. Clearwater, Florida. Raised as Scientologists, Christy King Colbran and her husband Chris were recruited as teenagers. To work for the elite corps, which that's a lie, by the way, of staff members who keep the Church of Scientology running. It's a propaganda. Known as the Sea Organization or Sea Org. They signed a contract for 1 billion years in keeping with the Church's belief that Scientologists are immortal. They worked 7 days a week. These are children. Often on little sleep, for sporadic paychecks of $50 a week at most. But after 13 years and growing disillusionment, the Colbrans decided to leave the Sea Org, setting off on a Kafkaesque journey that they said required them to sign false confessions. Isn't that your withholds? Is that what they're talking about? About their personal lives and their work. Pay the church thousands of dollars, it said they owed, for courses and counseling. And accept the consequences as their parents, siblings, and friends who are church members cut off all communication with them. I was just thinking about this. I don't know, sometimes things hit me a little later. How many of these Scientologists are only staying in Scientology because they don't want to be cut off from their family? And friends, number 2. I mean, it's like we already know that Scientology is wired shut by blackmail and threats, but I don't know, it just hit me. So it just shows you, even though these people stay in the organization, in a lot of ways that's weak because people don't really want to be there. Why did we work so hard for this organization, Miss Colbran said? And why did it feel so wrong in the end? We just didn't understand. I also want to add in there, you notice the disconnect in so many of the ex-Scientologists, and I don't mean any shade, but it seems like there's this huge disconnect that they don't understand they're talking about abuse here. But there's a lot of disconnect not disconnection, but just as far as, I don't think they realize how abused they were by their family, by their parents, by people that were their so-called bosses. You know what I mean? Okay. They soon discovered others who felt the same. searching for websites about Scientology that are not sponsored by the church, an activity prohibited when they were in the Sea Org, they discovered that hundreds of other Scientologists were also defecting. Notice the words, including high-ranking executive, prestigious executives that covered crimes of children, who had served for decades. "56 years, it's a Jesuit number, by the way, after its founding by the science fiction writer L. Ron Hubbard, who died in 1986, another pivotal number, 86, the church is fighting off calls by former members for a reformation. The defectors, like, South Korea, East Germany, China. The defectors say Sea Org members were repeatedly beaten, like the children were beaten as well. Let's talk about that. Here we go again with Davy. By the church's chairman, David Miscavige. Often during planning meetings. It does make me wonder, how was David Miscavige raised? Inquiring MF minds want to know. Pressure to have abortions, forced to work without sleep on little pay, especially the children, and held incommunicado if they wanted to leave. The church says the defectors are lying. Was that Tommy boy over there? Tommy Davis? Tommy! The defectors say that the average Scientology member, known in the church as a public, is largely unaware. I don't believe that. Is largely unaware of the abusive environment experienced by staff members. Again, I don't believe that. The church works hard to cultivate public members, especially celebrities like Tom Cruise. Oh my God. John Travolta and Nancy Cartwright. The voice of the cartoon scoundrel Bart Simpson, whose money keep it running. But recently, even some celebrities have begun to abandon the church, the most prominent of whom is the director and screenwriter Paul Haggis. Well, we know what happened with him, right? I am of the belief that Paul Haggis is guilty. And he was found guilty on various essay accounts of women. Shocking, I know. Wonder if those women were younger. Huh. Paul Haggis, who won Oscars. Yeah, that's so important, For $1 Million Baby and Crash. Mr. Haggis had been a member for 35 years. 35 is also a Jesuit number. So is 53. His resignation letter, leaked to a Defectors website, recounted his indignation as he came to believe that the Defectors' accusations must be true. Now, I'm just going to state for the record. That's it. Mike Rinder was a character witness for Haggis. Sure was. See a trend? These were not the claims made by outsiders looking to dig up dirt against us, Mr. Haggis wrote. These accusations were made by top international executives. Prestigious executives. Like the prestigious executives that cover up crimes against children, who had devoted most of their lives to the church. The church has responded to the bad publicity, black PR, by denying the accusations and calling attention to a worldwide building campaign that showcases its wealth and industriousness. Isn't that great for a church? I guess they have freedom of religion there, don't they? Last year it built or renovated opulent Scientology churches, which it calls ideal orgs, in Rome, Malmo, Sweden, Dallas, Nashville, and Washington. That doesn't scream offshore accounts, does it? And at its base here on the Gulf Coast of Florida, it continued buying hotels. Hotels. And office buildings, 54 in all. And constructing a 380,000 square foot Mecca that looks like a convention center. This is a representation of our success, said the church's spokesman, Tommy Davis. Tommy! Showing off the building's cavernous atrium, still to be clad in Italian marble, at the climax of a day-long tour of the church's Clearwater empire. This is a result of our expansion. It's pinch-yourself material. Nice bag. As for the defectors, Mr. Davis called them apostates and said that contrary to the claims of having left the church in protest, they were expelled. And since they're removed, the church is expanding like never before. And that's always their story. Said Mr. Davis, a second-generation Scientologist. Yeah, he does good in covering up crimes, too. Whose mother is the actress Ann Archer. I'm sure they ruined her life, too. And what we see here is evidence of the fact that we're definitely better off without them. A lot of people would say that about you, Tommy. Say that about Scientology. Bridge to total freedom. Scientology is an esoteric religion in which the faith is revealed gradually to those who invest their time and money to master Mr. Hubbard's teachings. Scientologists believe that human beings are impeded by negative memories from past lives, thetans, and that by applying Mr. Hubbard's technology at a really big cost, they can reach a state known as clear. They may spend hundreds of hours in one-on-one auditing sessions. Let me add, one-on-one sessions with children at Fort Harrison Hotel. That's why all these people, I didn't know, they know. They knew. They know. Auditing sessions holding the slim, silver-colored handles of an e-meter while an auditor, like a child, asks them questions and takes notes on what they say and on the e-meter's readings. If I'm not mistaken, this is just my theory, my assumption. I believe that the e-meter is recognizing like how much sweat is in a person's hands, any kind of trembling hands. It's detecting nervousness, which is very similar to what a lie detector does. I'm just saying. By doing enough auditing, from children, taking courses and studying Mr. Hubbard's books and lectures, indoctrination, for which some Scientologists say they have paid as much as $1 million, Scientologists believe that they can proceed up the bridge to total freedom and live to their full abilities as operating thetans, pure spirits. They do believe in God. I don't know, you guys. Or a supreme being that is associated with infinite potential. I mean, that's why they got to get the kids to produce, right? I'm just saying. Miss Colburn, who is 33. What a wonderful number they used, you guys. So much I want to say. I think Nora was onto something, you guys. That's all I'm going to say. Said she loved the church so much that she never thought she would leave. Her parents were dedicated church members in Los Angeles, and she attended full-time Scientology schools for several years. You know, where all the sex abuse happens and other abuse. Why isn't she talking out about children in Scientology? When she was 8 or 9, so she was a second gen too. Interesting, Rinder married a second gen. She took the basic communications course, which teaches techniques for persuasive public speaking. Sounds like manipulation to me. And improving self-confidence, and has served as a major recruiting tool. Served as a major recruiting tool. This is all child abuse. I think after she married Rinder, she didn't talk about this stuff as much, did she? By 10, Miss Colburn had completed the purification rundown, a regimen that involves taking vitamins and sitting in a sauna, a fixture inside every Scientology church, for as much as 5 hours a day for weeks at a time to cleanse the body of toxins. Also, I want to add here that the children will sit in these saunas just covered with a towel. I don't know if they have swimming suits on or what, with adults that are just covered with a towel. Totally inappropriate. We all know that. But so many people want to try to make Serge Del Mar the enemy. I mean, come on. It's a nice picture. Christy King Colburn, who has left the Church of Scientology's elite religious order. There's no such thing as this eliteness in the Sea Org. It's just such a joke. And is it interesting they call it a religious order? Wakey, MF Wakey, everybody. The Sea Org at her home in Safety Harbor, Florida. By 16, she was recruited into the Sea Org. You ever wonder who the recruiters were, you guys? And how many essays have we heard about that were done, carried out by recruiters? By 16, she was recruited into the Sea Org, so named because it once operated from ships, wearing a Navy-like uniform with epaulets on the shoulders for work. I wonder what ship she was on, you guys. She fully believed in the mission to clear the planet. They sure do like getting those 16, 15-year-old girls over there on those ships, don't they? Wonder why that is. She fully believed in the mission to clear the planet of negative influences by bringing Scientology to its inhabitants. Her mindset then, Miss Colburn said, why don't they call her Mrs. Colburn? Oh well. Was, this planet needs our help, and people are suffering. Well, Scientologists sure are. And we have the answers. Christy and Chris Colburn were married in a simple ceremony at the Scientology Center in Manhattan. Although she and her parents were very close, She said they had spent so much to advance up the bridge that they could not afford to attend the wedding. You see the wording, you guys? I mean, I do know a lot of them are suffering, so don't get me wrong. But you gotta, and it probably is true what she's saying, but you gotta put the blame or the responsibility where it lies. I'm not saying horrible stuff didn't happen, because it does. We know that. It was in Johannesburg where the couple had gone to supervise the building of a new Scientology organization that Mr. Colbrand, who was 29, began to have doubts. I've heard stories about this before, about when they send couples out to these missions. He had spent months at church headquarters in Clearwater, by the Fort Harrison Hotel, revising the design for the Johannesburg site to meet Mr. Miscavige's demands. It's always Miscavige, isn't it? Nobody else works there? Come on. Mr. Colbrand said he saw an officer hit a subordinate. What's the name of the officer? These fake officers, it's disgusting. Bad enough being around those arrogant, I'm just going off on a tangent. It was bad enough being around those arrogant officers in the military. I was in the Army. God, I couldn't stand some of them. They got their ass beat too when they went to Saudi. I'm just saying. And soon found that the atmosphere of supervision through intimidation was affecting him. Wonder what LAPD knows about all that. He acknowledges that he pushed a 17-year-old staff member against a wall and yelled at his wife, who was his deputy. I mean, there's forgiveness. They're under tremendous amount of stress. In Johannesburg, officials made the church look busy for publicity, as usual. Photographs by filling it with Sea Org members. The Colbrand said, the children, right? The Colbrand said, to make their numbers look good for headquarters. I can't help but think of LAPD and some of these various police stations, headquarters, that love to kind of fix their numbers a little. South African parishioners took their maids and gardeners to church. Oh, Scientology's going to love that. They love to get themselves some free labor. But the ideal orgs are supposed to be self-supporting, and the Johannesburg church was generating only enough to pay each of the Colbrands $17 a week, Mr. Colbrand said. How are they going to survive on that? I mean, this is a while ago in Africa, but it was all built on lies, Mr. Colbrand said. We're working 16 hours a day, trying to save the planet, and the church is shrinking. It's everything you know. The church is vague about its membership numbers. In 11 hours with a reporter over 2 days, Mr. Davis, Tommy, the church's spokesman, he took over after Rinder, I believe, gave the numbers of Sea Org members, 8,000 of Scientologists in the Tampa Clearwater area, 12,000, and of L. Ron Hubbard's books printed in the last 2.5 years, 67 million. But asked about the church's membership, Mr. Davis, Tommy, said, I couldn't tell you an exact figure, but it's most definitely in the millions in the U.S. and millions abroad. When do they start putting together that there's not that many people in it? He said he did not know how to account for the findings in the American Religious Identification Survey that the number of Scientologists in the United States fell from 55,000 in 2001 to 25,000 in 2008. The new flag building in Clearwater, Florida. You guys know they had child laborers out there, right? You guys know that. I've shown pictures. Which has been under construction since 1999. The building, which is 380,000 square feet, not 36, has 33-foot, it's got 33-foot ceilings, you guys. Of course. It's a master number, by the way. And a chapel that will seat 250 people. Marty Rathburn, oh boy, who was once Mr. Miscavige's top lieutenant. Think he still is. Must be a coincidence. Is now one of the church's top detractors. The churches used to be busy places where members socialized and invited curious visitors to give Scientology a try. He said, but now the church is installing touchscreen displays so it can introduce visitors to Scientology with little need for Scientologists on site. That's the difference between the old Scientology and the new. Talks about it like he really has deep admiration, doesn't he? The brave new Scientology is all these beautiful buildings and real estate and no people, said Mr. Rathburn, who is among several former top executives, prestigious executives that helped cover up child abuse. All these beautiful buildings and real estate and no people, said Mr. Rathburn, who was among several former top executives, quoted by the St. Petersburg Times in a series of articles last year about the church's reported mistreatment of staff members. There we go with the coding the words again. What percentage of the staff members at Fort Harrison Hotel are children? And I do remember hearing rumors whispered about Rathburn, about inappropriate relations. I'm not going to say too much, but I remember hearing stories about that, and that was why he went back. I've got a lot of thoughts on that one. When Mr. Colburn decided he wanted to leave the Sea Org, he was sent to Los Angeles, where potential defectors are assigned to do menial labor, like the children. While they reconsider their decision, Miss Colburn remained in Johannesburg, and for 3 months the church refused to allow them to contact each other, the Colburn said. There's that isolation. One thing Scientology's got down to an art form is isolation. Remind you of a lot of things that went on the past 5 years throughout the world, dividing people up? But what do I know? Letters they wrote to each other were intercepted. They said, isn't that tampering with United States mail? Isn't that a federal crime? It's a federal crime, right? Finally, Miss Colburn was permitted to go to Los Angeles, but husband and wife were kept separated for another 3 months. They also did that to Jenna Miscavige and her husband. Remember that? I forgot what Jenna Miscavige's husband's name was. The Colburn said, while they went through hours of special auditing sessions. Wonder if the auditors were children. Of special auditing sessions called confessionals. Okay. The auditors tried to talk them out of leaving, and the Colburns wavered. There's that, what do you call that? It's like another layer to stop people from leaving. They have so many layers. That's why a lot of people just off themselves. Right now, as I'm reading this, there are children thinking about doing that in Scientology. And nobody cares. Well, you guys know what I mean. I mean, people do care, but this is long. I'm sorry, guys. They could not just up and go. For one, they said the church had taken their passports. Huh. Doesn't Serge Delmar talk about that with the children? Especially on boats, you guys. It's like layers of isolation and threats and intimidation. It's like layers, which also is a tactic of satanic ritual abuse and MK Ultra. You just have to just go read up on it. It's even in the military, the need to know basis. It's all how secrets are kept. But even more important, they knew that if they left the Sea Org without going through the church's official exit process, they would be declared suppressive persons. Antisocial enemies of Scientology. They would lose the possibility of living for eternity. Their parents, siblings, and friends who are Scientologists would have to disconnect completely from them or risk being declared suppressive themselves. You're in fear, Mr. Colburn said. Wonder whatever happened to him. You're so into it. It's everything you know, your family, your eternity. Mike Rinder, who for more than 20 years was the church's spokesman, like Tommy, said the disconnect policy originated as Mr. Hubbard's prescription for how to deal with an abusive spouse or boss. Rinder sure did know the policies, didn't he? Now, disconnection has become a way of controlling people, said Mr. Rinder, who says his mother, sister, brother, daughter. That wasn't quite how it went, is it? Didn't Rinder just leave his wife and children? I'm not saying he was not under coercion and duress. I'm not saying that, but sure didn't know how to change things around. That they all disconnected from him after he left the church. It is very prevalent. Yeah, usually fathers and mothers usually think about their children first. It's usually what they do. But, who knows what kind of pressure Rinder was under. But I'm just saying, you guys. You guys know I don't care for him. Now, disconnection has become a way of controlling people. Okay, I already read that. Mr. Davis, Tommy, the church's current spokesman, said Scientologists are no different from Mormons. Well, I mean, when it comes to sex abuse, that's for sure. Catholics, Jehovah's Witnesses, yeah, more sex abuse of children. And Amish, and again, who practice shunning or excommunication. You guys see that this is all the pyramid? Divide and conquer? You guys see that, right? Young recruits, you mean children? Christy King Colburn left, and her husband, Chris, sent her in Johannesburg in 2004. These are common, Jesus is long. These are common religious tenets, he said. The very survival of a religion is contingent on its protecting itself. Yeah, that's why they charge so much money, you guys. I mean, it's so ludicrous. The Colburns went back to work for the church in Los Angeles. But Miss Colburn found the atmosphere so oppressive, LAPD's all about that, the staff members so miserable that she likened it to living under martial law and again resolved to leave. So she intentionally conceived a child. She knew that the Sea Org did not allow its members to have children, and she had known women who were removed when they refused to have abortions. She waited until her pregnancy had almost reached the end of the first trimester to inform her superiors. It still took 2 months before the church let the Colbrans go in 2006, and not before making them sign affidavits. All of the auditing that you do, there's files kept on it, Miss Colbran said. Miss Colbran, were you audited by children too? Huh. Inquiring MF minds want to know. All of the personal things you ever said, all the secrets, the transgressions, are all kept in there. They went through that file, wrote this affidavit as if I wrote it. And I never wrote this affidavit, the church wrote it, and made me sign it. So they use your own words against you, your own thoughts. They were also handed what the church calls a freeloader bill, which is not, it cannot be enforced by law. For services rendered of $90,000. See how they get all their money? Which they later negotiated down to $10,000 for Miss Colbran's portion and paid. They now had a child and no money, but they thought they were still in good standing with their church. I'm just going to interject here. So, I thought that when Colbran married Rinder, they had 2 sons. So, I wonder if the boys were her first husband, Chris's children. You know what I mean? Like, that he was a father. Mr. Davis, the church's spokesman, the handler, said the Colbrans' exit was not unusual. The Sea Org is a religious order. They love that word, don't they? The order. That requires enormous dedication, he said, and leaving any religious order can be a lengthy process. No, it can't. They're just so out of their minds. So out of their minds. Any other religion, you could just walk out the door. He said the church does require departing staff members to pay freeloader bills and to sign affidavits drawn up by church officials. But he contends that the affidavits never contain confidential information drawn from auditing sessions. That's a good one. It's a good short story. We have never violated that trust. Please. It's the only reason they do it. We never have, we never will. Yeah, right. The church in Johannesburg is thriving now that the Colbrans have left, Mr. Davis. Please. Suppressive persons. In 2008, organizers with the internet-based group Anonymous began waves of protests outside Scientology, churches in many countries. Anonymous said it was protesting the Church of Scientology's attempts to censor internet posts of material the church considered proprietary. See what they do, you guys? Including a video of Tom Cruise, an ardent Scientologist. No, he's just a mind-controlled, imbecilic moron, in my opinion. That was created for a church event, but was leaked and posted on YouTube. Since Anonymous has come forward, said Mark Headley, who belonged to the Sea Org for 16 years. Yeah, when he was a child as well. More and more people who have been abused or assaulted are feeling more confident that they could speak out and not have any retaliation happen. Mr. Headley, who wrote a book about his experiences, is suing the church for back wages, saying that over 15 years his salary averaged out to 39 cents an hour. His wife, who said the church coerced her into having 2 abortions, has also filed a suit. The couple now have 2 small children. The church acknowledges that Sea Org members are not allowed to have babies, but that's a Molochian thing too, you guys know, right? Moloch? But denies that it pressures people into having abortions. On the pay issue, it says the Sea Org members expect to sacrifice their material well-being to devote their lives to the church. Scientology parishioners, cult members, interviewed in Clearwater, seemed unperturbed by the protests, headlines, and lawsuits. Because they didn't know about it, probably. Maybe, I don't know. It's the numbers, too. Joni Segal is a 36-year, 36, like 6 times 6 times 6, parishioner in Clearwater who promotes the church's anti-drug campaign to local officials. To local officials. She said the Defector stories were like what you would hear if I asked your ex-husband what he thought of you. It's so not news, she said. It's a big yawn, actually. They always try to do that, act so uninterested. The Colbrands, despite their efforts to remain in good standing in the church, were declared suppressive persons last year. Congratulations. The church discovered that Mr. Colbrand had traveled to Texas to talk with Mr. Rathburn. I really would like to know a lot what happened with all that stuff. I really would like to know. The defector who runs a website that has become an online community for what he calls independent Scientologists. Well, there you go right there, you guys. There you go. How can anybody speak out about Scientology, but they're still practicing Scientology, which you guys know all the child abuse that's written into the policies? How could you ever trust any of them? And for a while, Rathburn and Rinder were the biggest buddies. But you guys know they weren't, in my opinion, not the best characters. So just makes me wonder who screwed who over first, you know what I mean? Who blackmailed who first. Just does make me wonder. The church immediately sent emissaries to Miss Colbrand's parents' house in Los Angeles to inform them that their daughter was suppressive. Miss Colbrand said they have refused to speak to her ever since. Great people, right? Recently, Miss Colbrand received an email message from her mother calling her a snake in the grass. Miss Colbrand says she still believes in Scientology. Oh boy, you guys. That should tell you everything right there. Should tell you everything. Not in the church as it is now constituted, but in its teachings. In other words, in the policies. She still believes in the policies. But her and Rinder allegedly were trying to take down Scientology. Come on. Come on. You guys ever heard of, controlled opposition? She still gets auditing from other Scientologists. Children? Who have defected, like Mr. Rathburn. Remember Mangotology talked about, what's the lady's name? Can't think of her name right now. She was allegedly a big anti-Scientology. Karen De La Care. Go watch some of Mangotology stuff. He alleged that he got caught into her grass. This is what he alleges in one of his YouTube videos. And he was in a very vulnerable state when he left Scientology. And then in the end, he wound up owing Karen De La Care $4,000 or something. Now, I'm only repeating what I saw on that YouTube video. I don't know. I wasn't there. Mr. Davis said there is no such thing. One can't be a Scientologist and not be part of the church. Cult. Mr. Colbrand, for his part, wants nothing to do with his former church. Eventually, I realized I was a part of a con, he said, and I have to leave it and get on with my life. Despite all they have been through together, they couldn't even get that right. That'd be Mr. and Mrs. Miss and Mr. Colbran are getting a divorce. The reason they agree, sadly, is that they no longer see eye to eye on Scientology. What does that tell you, you guys? What does that tell you? I would really love to know more of that story. I'll bet you would learn a lot if Chris Colbran spoke out about, his opinions and experiences about things. So anyways, that's it for now. I will leave a link in the description box. Like and subscribe if you choose. Otherwise, have an amazing day or night wherever you are. Peace.